Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what area of the world you're in. My name's Heather Leson. I'm with Open Knowledge Foundation, and today I'm here with Marieke Guy and Otavio Ritter, and we're going to talk a little bit about open education and what open data and open education, how those two things work together. So Marieke Guy is an open education community manager at Open Knowledge Foundation, and Otavio Ritter is an open data researcher in Brazil. So good morning, and Marieke, I understand you're in London.
Yes, good afternoon from London.
Great, great. So just to give everybody an understanding of what we're going to be doing and how the format's going to work today, we'll start off with Marieke. Who's going to give us an overview about open education and the working group that happens at Open Knowledge and some of the things happening around the world. And then Otavio is going to give us a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the kind of topics related to open education. And we'll certainly be here for answering any questions that you have. But with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Marieke. Good morning, and please go ahead.
Hi, so I'm Marieke Guy. I'm from the Open Education Working Group at Open Knowledge, and the question we're going to have a think about today is, what has open data got to do with education? So thanks very much to Heather for inviting us along to the community session. I'm really excited to be talking to you about this today. I'd start off by saying I think the answer is potentially a huge amount. Open data has got a huge amount to do with education, but we didn't want to just answer it like that, and hopefully you're going to hang around and hear more of our insights and thoughts and share your own later on in the session as well. So I am the community coordinator on the Open Education Working Group, but I also work on another project called Linked Up, which is about linking web data for education. And that's a project where we run a series of competitions and get people to design prototypes and apps using open data in education. So if you're interested in that, please do get in touch with me. So the Open Education Working Group has been around for coming up, well, not quite a year now. We started off at OKCon, and we felt that there was a bit of a gap in the open knowledge market. There wasn't a working group in this space, and we were really keen to set up a group that brought together people interested in lots of different areas of open education. So the goal is to initiate global, cross-sector and cross-domain activity. So you'll see what I mean in a minute, but we're trying to bring different groups together that weren't originally talking to each other. And we've now actually got two regional groups in Belgium and Finland. They both have an open education working group, which is great stuff. And hopefully there'll be more set up in the future. So this picture is of what I call the open education pie, but I just see these different facets of open education. So for example, at the top, sort of to the side, we've got children working in Africa using the One Laptop Per Child initiative, and they are having sort of new ways of working, but there's also whole new learning and teaching practices and the flipped classroom idea, which has been hugely successful. Then at the top there we have changing policy, open policy work, so for example the stuff that Creative Commons are doing in that space. Then there's OER, open education resources, and searching and finding and making content available openly. We've got the Mozilla Open Badges there, physical open badges, but they do obviously online stuff, and it's all about open accreditation and different ways of sort of understanding and accrediting and marking work and coursework. Creative Commons licensing, so about openly licensing materials, and then tools like, I think this is the Pundits tool from Open Glam, open source tools and how they can be used in education. And then we have open data, and so we're thinking about various different things when we talk about open data in education, but one example is open data that comes out of education institutions themselves, but there is many types of data that can be used in an educational way. So to carry on about our working group, we have a great advisory board. We have Kareem Bazoudenhout, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Shuttleworth Foundation. We have Lorna Campbell, and she works for CETUS, the Centre for Education Technology and Interoperability Standards here in the UK. Cable Green, he's the Director of Global Learning at Creative Commons. Jonas Makinen, he's a Finnish maths teacher who's doing some really exciting stuff around open textbooks. So a real kind of practitioner, someone doing stuff on the ground there. Bernard Nikobiatsky, difficult saying that one, and the initiator of the Open Education Rwanda Network. And finally, Raina Strambliowska, another tricky name, but some of you in the open knowledge community may know her from the Open MENA work that she does. So we have a great advisory board that are out there advocating what we do within the working group. And we've started to do some real concrete stuff now. So some of our activities are around community building, making contacts, getting people from all around the world to talk to each other. We were finding that people were talking, but very much in their own countries, in their own spaces. So we're hopefully making those links across different places. We worked on things like creating the Open Education Timeline, an interactive tool that sort of maps the timeline. We've got a session running at OK Festival in July, which is called the Open Education Smorgasbord. And that's looking, we're having various different tables and getting people to try out different open education activities. Support for areas such as standards and work. Also looking at things which are very relevant to the group because of our cross-cultural, cross-country focus. We have stuff around open education resources and small languages, so we want to do more in that space. And talking of language, we're just generally interested in open education language and making it more appropriate and accessible to different areas. So, for example, people like teachers who aren't so aware of open education, and supporting other activities that are going on. And I've already mentioned the local groups there. One of the key things that we've started working on is an open education handbook. This is actually for the Linked Up project, but this is a collaboratively written living web document. And the idea is that anybody can contribute to it and anybody can come and have a look at it and see areas that are missing. The coverage is very broad. We're currently looking at how we can make it relevant for different areas and different people. So giving different sort of perspectives on it and maybe having some sort of front end for it. It currently sits in BookType, which is an open source book editing software. And we've been lucky enough to have members of the community involved actually translating it into Portuguese, which was fantastic. A Brazilian group did that. We also have some of the handbook already available as slides on SlideWiki. So lots of potentially that can be done with the handbook. And here's some examples of book sprints that we ran to get some content for the handbook. But it's very much, the working group is very much about building community, about getting people working together who didn't necessarily work together before. If you are interested in the working group, it would be fantastic if you are. We're happy to bring in people from any walks of life. We're especially people who are actually practitioners and doing this stuff already. We have a fantastic mailing list, which is quite active, and we have like a Friday chat where we have a discussion topic, and that's really stepping up now. People are starting to come forward, and we're having a lot more great discussion. We have a Twitter list where we just share resources and share different things that are happening. Website and blog, and on our blog we actually have a series of posts from around the world looking at open education from different places. The handbook I've already mentioned. We also have working group calls. So our next one is on Tuesday the 8th of July, and they are an opportunity for people to come along and introduce themselves and get to know people within the working group. And then I mentioned already the session that we're running at OK Festival. And if you're interested in any of this, please do get in touch with me. It'd be great to hear from you. One of the things that the Open Education Working Group is really, really interested in how open data fits into the whole open education spectrum. Obviously from an open knowledge perspective, but I think it's an area that's really starting to be a lot more activity in this space. So I just wanted to share with you a quote from David Leson from the University of Hawaii. He picks up some interesting points here. I think he talks about how data is becoming a lens, a powerful lens, and how to understand what we are doing. So it's a way for us to reflect on what is happening within our institution, what is happening online and in different spaces. And also once this reflection allows us to make things better, to make activity better. So he talks about using data to understand deeper correlations and causality. And I think as open data advocates will know, it's the potential of this data and realising it that's really the great opportunity here. So within the project, the Linked Up project, and within the working group, we use terms like open education data and open educational data and open data in education fairly loosely, partly because these terms are pretty ill-defined. And I think when I think about open educational data, it could be referring, as I mentioned earlier, specifically to the open data that comes out of an institution, so a physical institution, but it could also be used more widely to anything that could be useful for the goal of education. So there's still some work to be done thinking at how these terms all fit together. I can see a Venn diagram on the horizon. So what exactly are we talking about? What type of data are we talking about? I've given some different varieties here, but the list is endless, and you will see from the URLs at the bottom of the page that there's further information on this, and there's sections in the handbook on this. But so we might think about student data, so anything produced by students, stuff around their grades, their skills, their attendance, their homework. Course data, really key area, curriculum, syllabus data, VLE data, number of textbooks, those type of things. Then institution data, so location data about where buildings are situated, infrastructure data, power consumption data. There's something that came up at the Making It Matter workshop that we ran recently, which was looking about open and linked data in the education space, but very much of the developing world angle. And some institutions out there don't even, some people really need to get data on whether there is electricity at different buildings, and those kind of data sets sometimes don't even exist, but they're very key to what people can do within these institutions. So you might talk about teachers' names, contract dropout rate, costs, here sponsorship, cost per pupil, those type of things, ratio of students to teachers, lots of really interesting stuff that could come out of institutional data. And then user-generated data, so learning analytics, assessments, performance data, job placement data, those type of things. And finally, policy and government data. So here much more to do with money and spending and transparency around these budgets and that type of thing, participation data. I wanted to share with you an example from the UK. There was a report that was carried out by the Open Public Service Network. I think the RSA, Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufacturers and Commerce, carried it out. And it was looking into the release of data sets within the UK and how they were being used and whether there should be more data sets released. And I think there is a tendency to think that some of this work is just purely about parent choice about where their students go to school or something around that. And I think that that actually there's a lot more to it than that. And this report highlighted it. It says it talks about school choice, and then it says it's equally as important as contextual information for parents and children wanting to understand their own or their children's educational progress. So I think here we're thinking about how each child can do the best that they can. So stuff around ability and making the best of resources and those type of areas. So it really goes beyond just parents making choices, I think. So how can we use this data? What kind of opportunities are there to use this data? And I think there are many, many opportunities. There are, looking at students, schools and the government, there's potentially great opportunities for each. So maybe creation of new tools, new ways to analyse and access data. So maps, for example, of things like disabled access to buildings, tools for analysing different disciplines, ways to enrich the resources and making them easier to share and personalise them, allowing students to explore different resources and make ultimately informed choices. Schools themselves, things like learning analytics data, now there are great opportunities to realise when students might potentially be about to drop out of university or school and offer them more support. And there are ways we can pinpoint those type of things happening. But improving efficiencies is very key. So things like library data, making good decisions about what books should be in the library and those type of things. And benchmarking again. And for governments, it can really lead to huge amounts of change and transparency and ultimately educational reform. And I think Otavio will talk more about that. I have some case studies. I won't spend too much time on these, but there are many more details on the Open Education Working Group and available about these. So Tanzania Shula, they allowed they had data from the government which allowed them to compare various different exam results across different regions of Tanzania and follow trends over time, which was some really exciting stuff. And the people involved in this were very young developers. So it's allowing young people to get involved in this just as much. In Holland, the government has driven a couple of initiatives around commissioning apps and prototypes to do with school choice. And looking at there's quite a few being built around that. There was a whole series of competitions around that. Then things like I haven't got them up here, but I think I have got institute in Nairobi and did pull together lots of performance data around Kenya and certificate of primary education and stuff, and they allowed there lots of comparisons between different levels and various choice making around that. So some really interesting work going on there too. And just as there are sort of new use cases and examples coming out, there is still much more activity going on. The Open Data Institute in the UK have recently run an Open Data Challenge on education, which they've just got the results from that. They've got the winner. In Massachusetts, they've got loads of data hacking going on. In Stockholm, they've got data hacking going on. And I think, finally people are starting to see that there is so much potential in this space. So I just wanted to finish with a couple of questions. I think I wanted to emphasise that this goes beyond just performance data and just getting children into better schools. I think it's important to point out that the government open data reflects actual public policy. So what is variable is very different in different countries, and very driven by how open that particular government is. And I think you'll pick up on this when Otavio talks about some of the comparisons between the UK and Brazil. And then, but then also, you need to think about what sort of data should we be collecting? What do we need to collect for assessment in some way? And how should we evaluate this data? Because it's how we do that is key here. I mean, how we're making statements on what we value as a student or as a citizen when we kind of evaluate the data in certain ways. Can we bring more people into the debate? I mean, parents are a whole new community that maybe haven't been so much involved in the open data movement before. And ultimately, can this lead to policy change and better education systems worldwide? So just some food for
some quick comments before we move over to Otavio. From Tori, he said that there's no guarantee for learning analytics data to be open, and sometimes it should not be open either. As well, he said there's no such thing as an anonymization from a data mining perspective as a general rule. I thought that was really interesting in terms of the privacy around open education. The other comment came from Alberto. Thanks, Alberto. He also was good in trying to help tech support, which is lovely. A lot of times the data refers to children, and privacy is an even bigger concern, so anonymization is a must. So both gentlemen really kind of tagging into the privacy conversation. Yeah. Now before we move, and I know that's a huge 10-hour discussion, and write your PhD on it, please. But before we move to Otavio, I just want to tell you a very quick story. At Open Data Day in Toronto, there was a group of civics students who were probably around 14, 15, and they were working on an open education project with their teacher, who was actually something of an open data community person in Toronto who runs something called Citizen Bridge. And he's kind of trying to help these kids understand how they can be part of their world. And so these kids got on stage, and I want to say kids, they kind of blew our minds, because they although they had a really good handle on privacy, but the thing that blew my mind about these civic students is that they really want to be part of their education solution. And to me, I think when I think about open education and open data, I think that's the if you call it the money shot, that's the one that the opportunity for it is that, you're asking for people to be involved in their world. There's all this information to do it. Have that conversation with them. And so I'm sure I just opened up a can of worms in terms of that example, but I'm happy to share that, and I'll certainly look for it. But I just wanted to say that I think that kids and students in education, they're not just being served. They actually want to be part of that. And I think that's what this opportunity of open education is.
I totally agree with you. I think, that's definitely something we should be doing more of, is involving children, in sort of exploring this data.
True story. It's fun. Super hard, but fun. Also, big privacy issues and security issues.
Yes, well, the privacy issues are tricky. I think there are a lot of data sets that we can explore already that don't have these issues so much around them, that are available in government data sets. But yes, I know that within the ODI they did some work on how you anonymize data sets and how you can use them in a different space and still use them in kind of interesting ways and pull out sort of visualizations and stuff on those data sets. But I understand about the anonymization issues. Anonymization is hugely costly as well, so practicalities there, but potentially I still think we can use these data sets.
Great. So, it's cutting out. Hello.
Yeah, still here.
Still here? Ah, welcome to community radio. Always fun. Okay, Otavio, please tell us more. Tell us what your tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on open education. And I've handed the screen over to you. You have about 10 viewers right now, and just remember that everything you say is being recorded. You're welcome as we talk about privacy. But the video will be available later. I know you have 11 viewers, so hooray. The video will be available later, and so we get upwards somewhere between like 30 to 100 viewers after the fact. So just so you know, even though there's 11 people watching right now and asking questions, which we're super happy for, we're going to have a question and answer at the end. Otavio, over to you. Please go ahead.
Okay, are you able to see the first slide?
Yes.
We are, but you need to share your whole screen.
Okay.
And in my interlude, can I say go Portugal and go Germany for you sports fans?
It's fine now?
It's beautiful. Go ahead.
Okay, greetings from Brazil. I live at Rio de Janeiro, and I would like to say thank you for Heather and Marieke to invite me for this session. What I'm going to do here is to present my research. Is in the draft mode already, so I'm able to complete this within 2 or 3 months. The provisory paper title is My Transparent School, a comparative analysis of open government data in basic education between Brazil and England. This research is being conducted under the FGV, Getúlio Vargas Foundation, under the Brazilian School of Public and Business Administration. It's one of the most famous schools at Brazil. And why this research is important, and why this open data in education is important to debate. First of all, I think all of you already know that we have the 8 Millennium Development Goals. And one of these goals is related to education. The others are already related, but the number 2 is very related to promote equity and promote access to all the people in primary education. So we need data to evaluate this. It's only possible to evaluate this goal if we have data and if the government distribute this data in order to have the checks and balances by the society. The second reason is the equity and the quality. How we measure quality, how we measure equity, we need to be sure we are extending the education to all the people that need. So again, we need data in order to promote this debate in our society. And the last but not least, the money. I mean, it's a black box. How much is the money being invested in your country to education? How you spend the dollars or the reais or the euros in education in your country? It has money. It's value for money. I mean, it has any corruption, any deviation from its intent. I mean, it's very important to have a lot of transparency in this area, so the society can track, so the watchdogs can track how the money is being spent at schools. The Transparency International entity already published a report specifically regarding education, corruption in education report, where they talk that transparency is very important in order to mitigate the risks of corruption in education. And why Brazil and England? I mean, Brazil is one of the co-founders in the Open Government Partnership. And England is one of the countries that has most data sets being published in their portal. also United States. So, and although they are very different countries, although they have their very different realities and education systems, it's very interesting to compare them regarding the education open data and how this open data is being used. I mean, David Cameron has a strong policy regarding transparency, and Dilma Rousseff, who is the Brazil president, also has a political agenda very focused in transparency. I mean, the Brazilian portal, transparency portal, is one of the best portals in the world regarding financial transparency. Has millions of data and registers there. Brazil also is in the beginning of the movement of open data, and already have some hackathons and hack events being conducted here involving the society. Brazil, as I said, Brazil is very different from England, so we can't compare the two countries in a simple mode. But it's interesting to see that Brazil has, inside Brazil, you have different countries. I like very much this figure from The Economist, showing that each state of Brazil has a GDP compared with a country. I mean, so you can see that, for instance, in the south and southwest, you have more rich states, and north and northwest, you have more poor states. And this reflects in the education, because at Brazil, the education policy is a responsibility of the states and local authorities. So if you have rich states and rich local authorities, in theory, you have good quality of education. And what happens in the poor states, where they have less money? So in the figures in the right, you can compare the numbers of England and Brazil. I mean, they are really different numbers. Brazil is all about scale. I mean, you have one state of Brazil that has the same number of pupils from England regarding basic education. But the money is completely different also. You have less money being invested in Brazil, so the discussion here is not value for money. The discussion here is more money to education. But the problem is that we don't know here how the money is being invested in the school. So open data can have an important in this discussion here at Brazil. Also, the teacher pay here is very low compared to other countries. Again, how the money is being invested, how the states compare with each other. All these questions you can ask yourself, and you can answer and debate within the society using open data. This slide shows very rapidly some theory. I don't want to extend here, but I think this is important because we have a huge demand from open data research nowadays, and we have a lot of theories to support open data research. In regard education, the main researcher that I found is Albert Meijer from Netherlands. He talks about computer-mediated transparency. He used this term in 2007 because at 2007 we didn't have open data term already. I mean, it was before the Sebastopol meeting. So computer-mediated transparency could be a proxy for open data in some research. And there's a lot of research from Albert Meijer comparing and analyzing the impact of releasing data to the society regarding the schools in the Netherlands. You have also some theory in terms of comparative frameworks. I mean, there's a huge literature being raised about the frameworks to compare open data and computer-mediated transparency uses. So this is important also in order to establish some criteria. And also a literature about transparency and open data impacts. I mean, especially the unintended consequences. A lot of people talk about transparency. A lot of people talk about open data. Hey, transparency is very good. Open data is very good. But what about the unintended consequence? This is very important to study, especially in terms of public policies, so we can mitigate these risks when we deliver data to the society. So the main question from our research is what the effects of open government data used in basic education, public education. So we have two words here, very important, effects and use. Use, I mean, we need to use the Ws. We need to use ourselves. Who are using the open data? Who are mediating the open data? For what? What is the content? For what he is mediating? Why he is mediating? Why he is using open data? I mean, what's the incentives behind using open data in the society? And when and where also they are important in order to analyze the effects of open data. In the beginning, open data was very, very studied from the supply side. I mean, it's open, it's not open. I mean, it's an XML or CSV file. How I can link the data with other data and so on. And now I think it's important to study the demand side of open data as well. I mean, how the society uses this open data, how the mediators interpret this open data and publishes information to the society. And also the effects. I mean, the effects are high and low regarding range. I mean, this mediation is being used by media, by local media, for instance, the league tables, the school league tables, or this effect, the mediation is being used just by some specific public. And externalities. I mean, we have positive, negative, and neutral. Again, unintended consequences are very important here in order to study if an open data can promote or can create some unintended consequences different from what you would imagine. So the analysis that I'm conducting here, we have three perspectives. The macro, meso, and micro. Macro is regarding education policy. I mean, how open data supports education policy. How using open data you can have checks and balances regarding open education policy. So you need to study the accountability model of the country, if it's a high stake, if it's a low stake accountability model, who are using this open data, if it's the media, if the watchdogs, if you have social participation, if you have a grassroots movement from your country to use that open data in favor of the society. And usually the data regarding the macro level is the census data, the school performance indicators or public performance indicators, and spending data. In terms of school management, I mean, we have an important role of open data in terms of collaboration between schools and benchmark. I mean, when you release open data, schools can compare with each other, can create clusters, can join each other in order to promote efficiency in the public service. Also, I found some evidences in the local authorities from Brazil and from England that local authorities use open data with the local community in order to promote efficiency of their services. For instance, in England, you have a Manchester Open Data Group. There's a very strong local group there. And this Manchester Open Data Group joined with the Manchester local authority in order to help them in their services, promoting their services. In Brazil, I have some evidence of local authorities, especially the poor councils, working with these open data groups in order to have data analysis tools for them. And in the end, in the student level, that is the most important level. I mean, for learning, for the education quality, we have the conflict between open governed data and data sharing. I mean, and this is very important because most of the future technology process in the education uses very high the pupil personal data. And how you release this pupil personal data in order to use these tools? I mean, there's a role for the government for that. I mean, it's important to study the concept of government as platform, so government can protect the privacy data at the same time releasing the data to the vendors, so the vendors can use the pupil data in order to promote personalized learning or education data mining and all the advanced technologies in the education. Regarding the examples, there are some figures already presented by Marieke, but here is, I would like to present one specialist from England, that is the Young Rewarded State. Young Rewarded State is a group from the Rewarded State group in England. They are civil hackers, and the Young Rewarded States are teenagers that they join and make some I mean some hacks in terms of to promote participation, to promote a better service, to promote a better society. And there's a story, interesting story here from Young Rewarded State. They were called by Michael Gove, who is the Department of Education Minister from England, to have a rec in the National Pupil Database. The National Pupil Database was released with an anonymized version for them, and the challenge was that this teenager would like to identify themselves in the data sets. So they were able to identify themselves in the data set, and Michael Gove had to roll back in his idea in 2012 to release completely the National Pupil Database. I mean, it is a very interesting story that I'm going to talk in the research. In Brazil, we have a grassroots movement. I mean, we have a hackathon specifically for the education data being promoted by the government. And we have last year, and we have again this year, with kind of 60 people joining this session. We have some research being done at Brazil using open data, census data, and administrative data in order to promote efficiency in the local authorities. And we have also some visualizations being created by the media, by local media here, regarding data journalism that is promoting the checks and balances and the accountability from the government regarding how the money is being invested, what is the quality of education, and so on. So in the end, this is the last slide. I mean, openness obviously is not every. It's something good in the sense, but we need to be aware that they have some unintended consequences. So every policy, we need to pay attention for that. So and data is important. Data in the education does not mean that you're replacing a pupil with a number. Data in the education means that you are promoting conversations regarding that environment with data support. So data is not the devil. Data is a way to initiate conversations regarding a problem, regarding a solution, and so on. And I would like to have a quote from Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire is a very famous educator from Brazil, in the world also, that he talks about the communication, I mean, the importance of communicate each other regarding in the area of education. And I think open data in education has a role in that. I mean, the open data needs to be used by the society in order to participate, in order to challenge, in order to debate the education, especially in the local authorities. We already have the institutions for that, and we need to engage more the society in terms of using this data in order to facilitate the use of data to promote this debate in our society. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Heather, you're muted.
Dear Google, sometimes I really don't like you. I like you and I don't like you. I like you for your manner in intervention, but some days not so much. So I just want to say, Otavio, thank you so much for your intervention and for bringing some reality into the open education, open data conversation. I think that regional differences happen in every country. I think that you're showing the regional differences between how we work on education by country and by region is important. I think that the expectation that what's going to work in one country will work elsewhere is also well noted. I like to think that the whole conversation about what is open data or what is open anything is about to be flipped on its head, greatly flipped on its head by the majority world in which you're part of. I think that the perspective that these templates that we're using are completely remixable, and I'm totally excited that you're bringing up these conversations. I think Marieke is also saying from the open data, from the Make It Matter workshop, that some of the premises that are built on need to be flexible enough so that people understand that the measurements are different by country, but also the expectation of what is changed and when it could happen is also different. So we do have some people who've attended. Thanks so much for attending if you do have to drop out. Alberto, thanks so much for the comments that you've been leaving. He's been leaving some resources. Wilbert had a comment about there's lots of useful data that has no privacy implications but still isn't open, including in curriculum data. And I personally think it's really interesting about curriculum data as well. My brother-in-law, his dad was a teacher, and he has 40 years of, 35 years of teaching history and civics in the United States, and this amazing curriculum that he's worked and has it worked on different years, and that's never been released, right? And would he release it? Well, if he was asked, maybe it would help the teachers of the future. But I mean, that's a little bit of a rabbit hole. So we got 15 minutes left. So Marieke, I'm wondering if you can share the slide about how people can get involved. And if you have some questions for each other, that would be awesome. I certainly have a lot of questions for Otavio too, and I think that it's just the surface. This is the first open education conversation we're going to have. I think that next time we'll have kind of deeper questions too. But Marieke, if you could share that screen, that would be awesome, because I want to make sure that people know how to reach you. And you're seeing me talking at you. Full screen. There we go. Tell us a little bit more about how people can get involved, Marieke. Oh, I think it's your turn to be muted.
Oh gosh, we're making all the basic mistakes today, aren't we?
That's super. Don't worry. We're here. We're on this journey together trying to make open happen. It's not easy. It's a work in progress.
Okay, so I mentioned the mailing list before, and we're really trying to have some quite good discussions on that list about all different areas. So not just about data, but how things like open education resources or online courses and the data that come out of those and how it all relates. And yeah, so I really recommend you join the mailing list. You can just sit there and listen, or you can participate. Better if you can participate. Twitter, that's, we post stuff out on Twitter. Have a look at our blog. We have some great stuff on the blog. Something I didn't mention is we have this great series of posts on open education around the world, which is just telling, giving a perspective from lots of different places, which is a fantastic series. And if you want to write something for us, please let us know. It's a community blog. We really want people on there. The handbook I talked about earlier, that's a collaborative resource that we're writing together. So please take a look at the handbook. Have a look at the sections that there suit you, or if you think there's something missing or something you could contribute to, that would be fantastic. Just get in touch. If you can think about what we can do with the handbook later, because we're starting to have thoughts around that, whether we make it into a wiki book, whether we keep it in book type, or we make it into a different type of wiki. And we really want to make that into a community resource. And then we have these working group calls, which you can come along to. It'd be great if you could attend the next one, which is in about sort of the week after next. And then we have a session at OK Festival, and always email me if you have some other ideas. But the working group is very much an active working group. We really want people to participate and be involved in the conversation. So, you know, and Otavio came along, and he was doing this piece of research, and he said, you know, this is what I'm doing. I wonder whether people have any thoughts on it. And we had a great conversation around it, and we've made some good contacts. And now we've had 2 sessions where we've chatted to each other, and hopefully we can maybe even build on that in the future with some work and some activity. That's something we're thinking about. So it's about making those connections, those contacts with people, and that, you know, hopefully people get that from the working group.
So just fantastic. So there's a community session next week, working group calls. Where do those happen?
Yeah.
Are those on Google Plus? Are they on Mumble?
They are another fun Google Hangout experience. So yeah, it's joyful. Yeah, so we have those. What we've tended to do in those, if we have people come along, we meet in Google Hangout, and we all introduce ourselves and tell each other what projects we're working on. We normally get between sort of around 10 people we're getting at those. And then we move on to discussing something in particular. So we actually have 2 people coming along to the next one. Somebody talking about learning analytics, and a guy called Mick Fuzz, who does a lot of work on floss manuals, who's talking about a tool that he's creating which helps searching of open education resources. And then we have a little discussion around that. And it's, again, just a way for people to highlight stuff they're doing, highlight ways other people can be involved. So yeah, the details of that are on the website, and we make sure we're making a big fuss just before they happen, so you can be there, hopefully. Yes.
Marieke, are those recorded?
They are. Hopefully, yeah, we managed to not record one of those. There's another kind of Google Hangout hiccup, but normally they're recorded. We have an Etherpad that we use with lots of notes and comments, and I also write up the minutes as well and share those on the blog. So yeah, hopefully we're reaching people in as many different channels as we can. So that's the idea, because we know not everybody can participate, obviously, due to time zones and things. We have been alternating the time zones and having them later or earlier, you know, just trying to make the conversation happen in different places, because it's very much a global group, and it's a great thing. I've been involved in lots of groups in the past, but they tend to be national around open education. But this is a global group, and I think that's fantastic, because we have so much we can learn from each other. So, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we've told people how to get involved. Otavio, how can people learn more about your research? Now, you've given the slides, etc. What are your next steps, or do you have any other closing comments? We have a few minutes just left today.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, in 2-3 months, we are going to release the paper in the Portuguese and the English version as part of the open data research from the school. And as soon as I have the paper, I will have this paper being published in the Open Education Working Group, probably. And obviously, if anyone wants to touch me regarding this research, I would be very glad. I mean, very happy to talk and share some experiences.
That's great. That's great. So, Marieke, how do you guys get to the next 1,000 people who are interested in open education? What tips do you have for people who are your advocates? How, besides joining your Get Involved, and I know that was like a question I didn't tell you I was going to ask, so you're welcome. But I mean, how do you think you can grow this community and get more people involved?
I mean, it's a tricky one, but I think for me personally, there's 2 different angles that I'm really keen to do more in. Firstly, there's around collaboration with schools, because I think a lot of this activity so far has happened in the higher education university space, and I think schools potentially, they are the real people who could benefit from some of the stuff that's doing. So things like resources that are openly available. Teachers are very, very busy people. Teachers need as much support as they can get. But there's starting to be some more activity around how we can support teachers and how we can help them with understanding licensing, how we can make resources easier for them to use, how we can make data easier for them to use. So I think they're one of the really, really important places we want to do more work and want to reach out to. So that's one. And the second one is, I mentioned the developing world, the global south area. So having more collaboration with people there and finding out about how how we can help them or how we can support them to do what they need to do. And I think that if you want to, we mentioned the Making It Matter workshop, but that was a really great event and there was some great outputs from that. And I learned so much about, just how even our perspective on it, the idea that we create tools and then we roll them out there and expect them to use them, when actually we want to be supporting them to help to make their own tools and supporting them to get their own data sets and that type of activity. So a lot of collaboration with people out there, a lot of localization of resources, and just making those links. So they're my two sort of key areas, spots for the future.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it really is about co-creating. And like not just launching anything and expecting to have users come is maybe not necessarily the best process. By really focusing on how you bring people on that journey and how you widen that circle, I really think it is the starfish and spider kind of approach, and I think it's super hard. I think this is a new conversation for a lot of people, and just figuring out how we get there is certainly what we're all trying to do. So. Thanks so much, both of you, for your thoughts today on what is open education and how can people get involved and what are some of the kind of granular things happening in Brazil, which is really exciting to learn about. I find that sometimes I feel like I'm doing these sessions so that I can learn about what the heck's going on in the world. So if I come at it with all these curiosities, it's because I'm so fascinated by all the work that people are doing and how brilliant it is. But as we move forward, there are ways to get involved, which Marieke shared. Otavio will be sharing on the Open Data, Open Education Working Group stuff. And for those of you that are coming to OKFest, super excited to hear what will be happening there. And I know, Marieke, you guys will be creating lots of content for the folks who can attend.
Come to our smorgasbord session, because not only are we doing open education stuff, we also have food. So we really want people to come along. Yeah. It's a smorgasbord in many senses of the word, so yeah, it should be good.
Fun. So, and also we all have to practice pronouncing the word smorgasbord. I just don't have enough coffee in me for that. All right, so with that, I'm going to close off the broadcast. I just want to say thank you again to Otavio and Marieke for your preparations and for the dialogue with folks, and thanks for all the participants for watching, and stay tuned for more things from Open Education in the future.